Well, guys, we've got a new sheriff in town in the middleweight division. That is Khamzat Chimaev. Now, although Dricus was absolutely fucking robbed, just kidding. Guys, I wanted to make a video about this because I feel there's a few things that need to be said and put in place, if you will. First off, I want to say congratulations to the new middleweight champion, Khamzat Chimaev. This was probably the most dominant performance we've seen in a title bout that went 5 rounds. Dominant being that there was no action really whatsoever on the side of the defending champion from Dricus Duplessis. I did not, as a fan, expect this type of performance from either man, to be honest with you guys. If you watched any of my pre-fight content, whether it be the picks and predictions, or even like my girlfriend and I, our picks and predictions, or even my actual breakdowns of their styles between Dricus and Khamzat, I never could have even imagined nor expected it to go the way it went. I think that it is very interesting to see kind of the dialogue that's happening right now about this fight. A lot of people seem to be either really in support of Khamzat or shitting on him. I feel like, guys, there's the biggest thing I can say about this is two things that are opposite or non-congruent can still be true at the same time. And where I'm headed with that is this fight, although dominant and clearly showed that Khamzat is just another level when it comes to the grappling, doesn't necessarily make it a fun or exciting fight to watch. So I feel like it's okay that people are saying this is boring. It was a boring fight. Now, it was boring, and I think that what's happening here is a lot of the fans are taking that comment, saying it's boring, and just they're automatically assuming that this is a knock on Khamzat. Now, for a lot of fans, it is a knock on Khamzat in terms of like where they're coming from. They're coming from a place of shitting on Khamzat, saying he's a boring fighter. I, knowing the history, knowing all the things, would never say Khamzat's a boring fighter. Now, I can say he had a boring performance on Saturday, but at the same time, I do feel like we got to apply some type of blame to Dricus on the fact that he was unable to stop the game of Khamzat. And I think Dricus, knowing how Dricus is, guys, just from, seeing him online, and just seeing how I feel like Dricus is a man's man. Like, he's the type of guy that is not going to make excuses. He's the type of guy to say, like, look, he was the better man. His game was better than mine. And I think he would take full accountability on the fact that although he did his best to not get taken down, he was unable to stop it. And therefore, a boring fight is not just to blame on Khamzat. Now, I, like a lot of fans, I am not a fan. It's not that I'm not a fan of grappling. I don't like seeing the whole thing, the narratives online that people are going with about how there's a bunch of fans who are Islamophobic or feel a certain way about Muslim fighters and that they're just blindly hating them. Now, I'm not going to say that doesn't exist, because I'm sure it does. I mean, you can never be in life. You can never be all in on anything, really. You can never be objective about anything, really. And that's what I mean by that is, it's like, for me to say that that's not happening would just be false, because no matter what, even if it's a very minuscule amount, there are probably people out there that have those views, which I 1000% disagree with. But the thing that I will say from my standpoint is that I am just not a fan of grappling to grapple with no intention of finishing the fight, right? So if you are grappling a guy to the ground and just doing so to hold that person in that position, but not advance position, not try to throw up a submission attempt, not try to land heavy ground and pound and win, that is not going to be my favorite style nor my favorite type of fighter, okay? Now, Khamzat kind of did that in this fight. He did his best in several moments, though, to try at least throwing up a submission. Whether or not that he was really trying for it is, that's up to, Khamzat to speak on. But I would say from a viewer perspective, this, especially even myself being a hardcore fan, I've watched every UFC event since UFC 239. And I'm not kidding when I say that. I have watched every single fight night card, every single pay-per-view card since that time. And even if it was a moment where I wasn't able to watch the card, I always rewatch or, if I was able to watch it later, just watch it after the fact. But I have not missed one fight card, but I can still sit here and objectively say Khamzat had a stellar performance, but it was not a fun performance to view, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. People saying that anyone with that take is a casual fan, I would question that based off the fact that I can sit here and tell you guys I am not, I think that I align more to a striking type fighter solely because I think when fighters are generally throwing strikes, there's probably a higher percentage that they're going to finish the fight. And I just like finishes. I like when guys get tapped. I like when guys get punched out. I like to see finishes. I'm not a big fan of decisions. Now, I obviously, being a big fan of UFC, you can't really choose that, right? Like we all have to be somewhat aligned and understand that decisions are going to happen, especially at the highest of highest levels in the game. But I am not going to sit here and shit on Khamzat because I feel like Khamzat, he did what he wanted. He did everything he wanted to do in that fight, and Dricus could not stop it. And so, how can I sit here and just completely bag on the guy when it's it's two guys that make a fight, right? And I'll also say this. I actually like Khamzat shorts. I'm just going to say it. I know a lot of people want to shit on them, calling them swim trunks. I think they're pretty dope, to be honest, guys. Maybe I'm just a fool, but I think that they're pretty dope. I like the blue on them as well. It's not that purple blue that they fucking say is blue, but it's purple and make you think you're going blind. I don't know. I think that it was a stinker of a main event compared to, the events that transpired just before, right? With the spinning elbow KO from Protest and the spinning elbow KO from Lerone Murphy. And then you kind of go into the main event and you get a fest of just dominant grappling. But what I will say, guys, is I've seen a lot of people just complaining online about how Khamzat's a boring fighter. It's not true. And I think as fans, that's where we have to, not only as fans, but I guess for someone like myself, other creators, we as a collective unit have to call out those forms of bias or those incorrect labels, because although Khamzat had a boring performance this past weekend, Khamzat is not a fighter that you can even I guess now because of Saturday's performance, he might have a little bit of that categorical label of, being a lay and pray type fighter, but that is not Khamzat. Khamzat is a finisher through and through. I mean, the guy only has 3 decisions in his entire career, I believe. So we can't sit here and say he's just this boring lay and pray type fighter. That is more of a Renat Fakhdinov. He is definitely more of a lay and pray type style that I am not a fan of. Yeah, I'm just not a fan of that style. I'm never going to be. And for people to be up in arms about someone like myself or other fans who feel that same way, I can't even understand it. Because what argument is there for why you as a fan would rather see a guy lay on somebody for 15 minutes than see that same guy try to land ground and pound and finish the opponent? What is the reasoning why you would rather see a guy just lay on the other dude versus trying to advance the fight, whether it be from a submission, whether it be from ground and pound? And I can understand tactically why Khamzat might not have gone as hard as he maybe could have. And we know that Khamzat could have went harder. And that is one thing I want, the fan base on Khamzat's side of the house to at least come to the forefront and admit, is that we all know Khamzat can do better than that. And I think that is where a lot of people are frustrated. It's more so that it's we have expectations of Khamzat's game because of how good of a fighter he is and how dominant he can be. I think we all expected him to push for that finish a bit more, but I'm not going to shit on him because, guys, this is one performance from Khamzat that is, I guess lackluster, right? Because even if you were to look at Khamzat's previous fights where he had close fights, And myself, if you guys watched my Khamzat breakdown last week, I even went into like a long dialogue before kind of breaking down all the nuts and bolts about how I felt Khamzat, a few years removed now. Rewatching that fight between him and Kamaru, he 1000% won that fight. I don't think it was even really remotely close to going Kamaru's way based off of rewatching it. I think that a lot of fans felt that it was, but in reality, I think the only debate you could have on that fight is if this fight goes 5 rounds, maybe Kamaru pulls it off. But if you're just basing it off 3 rounds, which is how it should be, because it was a 3-round fight, Kamaru didn't win any of the rounds, in my opinion. I think Khamzat won them all pretty fair and square. And he did so in a way that was not boring. They were striking on the feet. He went for the finish. He tried to land some ground and pound, tried to go for submissions. Like, he did all the things that you would expect, and it ends up going to decision. But I think in the fact of the Dricus fight, it's just that there just was barely any time on the feet for there to be those fun moments and just get you kind of sucked back into the fight. I will say it almost seemed to me like Khamzat didn't feel fully comfortable on the feet with Dricus, because the second Dricus was finally landing shots, at the tail end of the fight, Khamzat was instantly right back into grappling mode, get him to the ground. But I'm not going to sit here and shit on that because, guys, let's just be honest. I'm not a cage fighter. I'm sure a lot of you that watch are also not cage fighters. So it is so easy for each one of us to be, in front of the camera here, just being like, yeah, if I was Khamzat, I would have fucking boxed his ears off. I would have boxed Dricus back to South Africa. Like, it's so easy to say that, but in reality, like, when another dude is trying to take your head off in a fight and you somehow know, because this is not always going to apply, guys, but I'm going through a scenario here. If you somehow, like, if you're going to get in a fight with somebody, and you somehow know that, hey, Jimmy, who's coming at me right now to throw some punches, he's a good boxer, but his fucking wrestling's dog shit. And I used to wrestle. I didn't. I'm just saying hypothetically. Why would I stand in front of this man who clearly might be better with the boxing and give him a chance to basically KO me in the biggest fight of my life? Like, that is one thing I try to always do, guys, is although obviously I am not a cage fighter, I have a lot of respect for these guys, and I just try to put myself in their shoes. Khamzat, he did go for the finish when he could, but it wasn't as much as I think I would have liked to see from Khamzat. But at the same time, I could sit there and say, like, Khamzat clearly, by the time these exchanges were happening, where Dricus was kind of, landing some shots, landed a solid 1-2 and a head kick, and like at the very end of the fight, I'm not going to sit there and shit on Khamzat for knowing at this point that, hey, this guy has no match for my ground game. I'm going to go right back to what's working for me. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is. It's what works for whichever opponent, and who is able to execute their game plan better to win the fight. And that's exactly what Khamzat did. So I understand, and I'm actually in agreement with a lot of fans that are saying, look, this was a dominant performance, and it was a otherworldly grappling showcase, really, in terms of just the ability that Khamzat has to not only take Dricus down multiple times, but hold Dricus in the crucifix position several times for several minutes. That is not an easy thing to do. And obviously, if you think that is bullshit, or, whatever, this is dumb, like, this shouldn't be happening, like, you guys have not grappled before. And I just, that's all I have to say. Because, like, even if you've just, like, I've even done, like, I've done a few jiu-jitsu classes in my life. I actually just recently did a gi jiu-jitsu class not too long ago. And you do not understand how difficult it is when you have another human being who's not only in jiu-jitsu class, you don't get to pick weight, right? You're just kind of rolling with the others that are in attendance there. But even like myself, so I'm a bit of a bigger human being. I'm 6'4", but I'm not that big. I probably weigh 185 right now. And so I'm not like the smallest of human beings, right? But I'll just give you guys some perspective. So I used to grapple and fuck around with my friend CJ. I don't even know. CJ might watch this video. And I whooped his ass every single time. Just kidding. But that I remember specifically, this is during like COVID. CJ, my other friend Sam, and I were all hanging out watching UFC, whatever. We were grappling and fucking around. And at the time, I think I want to say CJ's maybe 5'9", 5'10", 5'9" or 5'10" height. And I think at the time he was like 215. And CJ is like a big guy. Like he lifts. He actually broke the fucking bench press record at our high school years and years ago. Or he had like a record. I don't know. Anyways, we were, fucking around grappling. And he got me. He shot down for a takedown. And of course, I did what every idiot does, right? You jump the ghillie. But once that like went away and he was on top of me, I legit could not get him off of me. Like, and I was at the time, like, we probably had a 30-pound difference because I maybe weighed 190 and he's 215 to 220. I couldn't get him off me. He used to wrestle, but like, he's not like a jiu-jitsu guy, but he was just on top of me. And like, I couldn't shrimp out. I couldn't move my hips out. Like, and a lot of my height is in my legs. So like, you take that away, I don't really have much to work with there. And so the reason I'm providing this detail is just like, if you've never had those moments of grappling with another human being, not only is it absolutely exhausting, like today, if I went and grappled for 1 minute, I would probably gas the fuck out and be just wiped. Okay. And so I think it is very cheap as fans for us to be like, oh, like it's style, like we shit on it. And yeah, I do shit on it when it's just for lay and pray and not for winning the fight by being the more dominant fighter from a finish perspective. Like, I want to see guys go for finishes. But if you've exhausted all your options from a finishing standpoint and you're, tactically trying to stop the opponent from getting up, like, I can understand that mindset and reasoning for why you wouldn't want to give your opponent any type of leeway in standing up to their feet. I think that Khamzat had a perfectly executed game plan. And the biggest thing, guys, is everybody now is wanting to shit on people who pick DDP. I picked DDP to win. And I was wrong. And I'll just 100% always own that, accept it, and it's fine. Like, I'm not one of these people who shits on Khamzat and thinks that, he's never going to defend. And I believe, my belief on Khamzat, guys, is that now, obviously, he had a few pullouts from weight misses and COVID and things like that. There were a few pullouts, but this guy's whole brand in the UFC started off as being this super active fighter, ready to go whenever. And I like to believe that the reason Khamzat hasn't been as active in recent years is solely based on the fact that his name value it shot up to a place where he was no longer in a position of like, hey, I can just jump in on short notice fights, because the star power he brings to a card makes it more marketable for the UFC, meaning that the UFC is not going to just let Khamzat's name be attached to any fighter in any card. Like, they are going to have to do a lot of things behind the scenes to map things out and make sure they're using Khamzat as the promotable asset that he is for the UFC in the right way. And so because of that, I think that is where we have seen this kind of logjam of activity from Khamzat. Now, you mix in like the unfortunate circumstances where he's gotten sick and things of that nature, and that's what it becomes. It's just unfortunate. Like, the pullout against Whitaker, he got sick. Like, that shit happens, guys. And so I am not one of these people that is going to sit here and be like, Khamzat's so inactive, he never fights. Like, you blah, 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 blah. Because I think that a lot of that is likely driven by the UFC and not Khamzat. I think that Khamzat is a guy who likes to fight. I just think it's a matter of the UFC making sure, all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. Or as I like to say, all the T's or all the I's are T'd. I don't fucking know. All the I's are crossed, T's are dotted. Like, I like to fuck it up right that. But I think that Khamzat, now that he's the champ, and this is actually something that Dana White alluded to in his take on it to the media. He had said that now that Khamzat's champ, he doesn't see any issues with inactivity because he is the hunted, right? Like, now he is the guy in that top position, where the other thing that we don't all consider a lot is that how many people turned Khamzat down or didn't want to fight him. I'm sure there were a lot of people in the middleweight division specifically, but also in welterweight that didn't want that matchup. And now that he is in the king spot, the contenders don't have a choice. They have to go up against the champ. And so I feel like, and this is just me feeling optimistic, I think that we will see Khamzat fight a lot more often as a champ compared to him not being champ. Now, I don't think we're going to see him fight, 4 times a year, but I think at least 2 times a year is definitely what we would probably see from Khamzat, in my opinion. Now, could be completely wrong. I'm hopeful that Khamzat proves that right. And I think if you look at his previous track record, I don't think it's Khamzat sitting here not wanting to fight. I guarantee you there are so many behind the scene business decisions happening that stop him from being as active as he once was. So I'm not going to shit on him for that either. Ultimately, I feel like Khamzat will be active. I'm hopeful he gets back in there in October, like he says. And I just hope we can continue to see like either Khamzat go on a long reign and have, great defenses. I would like to see him get back to those ways of, looking for those finishes versus being in a situation where it's kind of like a lay and pray or just, getting a guy. It's hard because it's like, even though, there's the lay and pray style, but he got Dricus in a crucifix multiple times, which is not a lay and pray position. That is a position where an opponent is looking to land damaging shots. I just think that, Khamzat either just didn't have the right openings for that. But yeah, ultimately, guys, I just wanted to put my opinion out there. I feel like although it was a boring performance, it's not all on Khamzat's shoulders. It should be an equal blame because it's also on Dricus to be able to get out of those positions and stand up to his feet. And if he couldn't do that, like, I'm not going to shit on Dricus for not being able to do that because it's not easy to do. And the other thing is that I think a lot of us fans can never truly understand or quantify is the skill level, especially of someone like Khamzat. Like, you realize, like, you could put 10 guys in there to grapple DDP, and DDP might do great, but it's like, how many of those guys have the skill level of Khamzat? None of them. And that's just what it is. And I think that when you break it down that way and you realize like that Khamzat just has otherworldly gifts, whether it be just genetics, whether it be natural strength, but just also the skill level of his grappling. You can't quantify that, and it's so hard to replicate that. And so no matter what you do as a fighter, leaving no stone unturned, the thing is you're never going to be able to get your opponent in your training camp, right? Dricus was never going to be able to have Khamzat come for training sessions and like train with him to fully quantify and understand that skill level. And I think that this is just a learning moment, right? We see, and I think for me now, the reason I didn't go with Khamzat in this fight is I felt like, the fight against Rob Whittaker, I just think that I compare the size of Rob Whittaker compared to Dricus, and I just felt like, okay, obviously, Khamzat did what he did with Robert, but I'm like, it's not going to be as easy for him to do that to Dricus just based off of, sheer mass and strength, okay? And it's not a fail-safe approach, obviously, but I looked at it that way, and I'm like, we haven't seen Khamzat push through those 5-round wars. And I've seen Dricus, get his ass whooped by Adesanya for 4 rounds, the better part of 4 rounds, before he finally lands a shot, gets Adesanya down, and chokes his ass out. It's like, I've just seen him more tested in those moments, and I think that is where I was driving my decision is like, I just don't know. I just don't know it yet. And now I've seen Khamzat do this, and I was not one of the people that was saying, will Khamzat's gas tank last, because I knew he was training with Sam Calavita. Like, I knew all of the things. And so I was more so just erring on the side of caution, knowing that I've seen Dricus in these positions and kind of find his way out of it. I just knew that Dricus was not going to, up and quit in the middle of the fight. Not that Khamzat would, but I felt like Dricus would have much better takedown defense. And that was that's where I was wrong. But ultimately, guys, I feel like Khamzat being champ was something that we all anticipated happening at some point. And now that it's happened, I'm super happy because there are a lot of fun matchups. And I'm actually making a video right after this where I'm going to talk about that. So just wanted to say my piece on this situation. I think that two things can be different but true at the same time. I do think that this was a very dominant performance from Khamzat. Very happy for Khamzat. Congratulations, sir. I just also think that it was not the most fun performance to watch, but at the same time, I respect the game, and I'm excited to see what happens with Khamzat as the new middleweight champ. And I also know Dricus is going to get back out there and prove himself once again, and he could be, coming up to contend for the belt yet again, and maybe get a second crack at the Khamzat Chimaev puzzle. We shall see what happens, but ultimately, guys, I think UFC 319 was still a fun card overall. We have another death in the Bellator family, Bellator PFL. But yeah, guys, that's my take on everything. Let me know what you guys think about that whole situation. Like, where do you sit on that fence? Are you feeling like it was a boring fight or the opposite of that? Would love to hear from you guys. Make sure you give this video a like, and also please subscribe to Fight Feed if not already, so you can stay on top of all the new content that I will be creating. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.